Good morning, everyone. Before we get started, I feel like it's impossible to move on to any topic here without acknowledging what seems to be the most important topic in our country and our world right now, which is the senseless killing of George Floyd and and the resulting reaction from the world. And I think that we'll just go without saying that while we understand that healthy eating is important and we're going to address it today, this is all in our minds. And the fact that Union Square Practice completely acknowledges that there is a huge social injustice against Black people in the United States and the world. And just wanted to let you know that we're thinking about that, and it's on our minds, and we hope it's on your minds too. And we're all thinking about positive ways to respond to the crisis that we have in our country. That said, we have a wonderful guest with us today who I know personally, and who is passionate about what she does and extremely knowledgeable about what she does, and also works in the border between mental health and physical health, where we're all struggling with. And so welcome, Sydney, to talk with us.
Thanks so much for having me, Jonathan. And yeah, I'll just piggyback off of what you said and just take a note before we get started that yeah, healthy eating during quarantine and feeling your best is the goal, right? And we're going to talk about how to do that. And I also want to acknowledge that not everyone has access to a lot of the things that I might bring up today. And at the end of the day, we're all just doing the best we can with what we have.
Well,
Um,
I'm glad you said that, Sydney, because the other thing I think about too is in what you said, because Sydney, you're someone who is an expert on mindful eating, is an expert on eating in general, and I think one of the things I think about, is in times of stress, our eating changes, and no matter what you think about what's happening right now, we're all I think most of us are feeling stressed. And so what happens to humans? Like, how does our eating change under these circumstances typically?
Awesome question. The way I see it is like there's two different camps of people. And I'll leave the psychology part up to you. But on the one camp, we have people who turn to food when they're stressed, right? And that might be there's a lot of cortisol, which is a stress hormone pumping through your body. And so your body in that state naturally craves quick energy because we're designed when cortisol comes because we see the tiger coming, we need to run. And so we need sugar, we need fast acting carbs. And so there's the chemical component driving you to the food. There's also the emotional. But then there's the other camp of people who, when super stressed out, anxious, feeling powerless, out of control, turn away from food, whether that's your appetite suppressed. And so you just don't want anything. You're like too strapped to even think, how do I nourish myself? And then there's also anyone that has like some food gremlins or body gremlins, as I call them, and, has a little bit more disordered eating going on that can really pop up right now because everything else just feels way out of control. So like let me turn in and just avoid food.
So for those of you that were born recently, Gremlins is one of my favorite movies of all times. It's so weird that you bring that up because I've been talking about Gremlins, the movie, for so Gremlins, there's these little cute furry animals that once you pour water on them, they turn into these demon no 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 sorry. When they turn to midnight, or they eat after midnight. Isn't that what it is?
Listen, I wasn't even familiar with the movie. I'm
Oh,
just calling them
I'm
a
calling
friend.
them Gremlins. Okay, so Gremlins is funny because Gremlins, I think what it was, and actually, if in the chat box, if I'm getting this wrong, just chime in here, because I just want to make sure like I'm on the right track. So I think it was that the Gremlins, when you pour water on them, they multiply,
Mm,
and I think if they eat after midnight, they turn from these cute little gizmo, fluffy, like multi-poo looking guys to these like demon-esque dragon critters.
got
So
it.
I think it's pretty. Am I right, folks? Let me know here in the chat box if I'm on the right track, because I don't want to listen. One of the things we don't do at Union Square Practice is provide false information. So, okay, so
Okay,
David's
David's
checking
got it.
IMDb right now, but I'm aging myself here, but anyway, so you're talking about gremlins. I feel like I've got gremlins.
We
I mean,
all
I noticed, yeah, but like I noticed that, and I'm sure that there are folks here too that, around, stressed or not, around 9 or 10, it
mm.
almost seems like there's a constant internal Haagen-Dazs ad in my mind. Like, those planes that fly over the beaches with the signs.
Oh yeah.
It's almost like a Haagen-Dazs sign, flying by. What's up with that from your perspective?
Yeah, that's what I like to call the witching hour. Could be 9 or 10, and for other people could be 3 to 4 p.m., like that slump. Um, it's usually the time we're winding down. And so we like to wind down with something sweet, usually. And for everybody, it's different, but most of the time in the evening, it's sweet foods. And that depends. I'd be curious. I ask people, like, what are you doing around that time? Do you have the news on? Do you have a cooking show on? The cooking show is really interesting because they've actually done research that shows when folks like lay in bed or get on the couch at night and turn on Top Chef or whatever, and why they need to do a research study on this, I don't know, but it supports it, that there's overconsumption of food at night because it makes sense. You're seeing cues. And I just think that a lot of us, food is comfort. It's definitely comfort for me. And Haagen-Dazs, it's funny you bring that up. That's mine too, ice cream. And when you're little or younger, if you had a bad day and someone took you to get an ice cream cone, that still tracks, even as an
They still
adult.
take me. They still take me now. Now when I'm little, I mean, people are. If I misbehave here, they still drag me. Union Square practice people try to drag me out for an ice cream cone sometimes. No, I mean, I think what you're saying actually really interesting, Cindy, is that it's really about, I think what you're saying. I mean, this is where the psychology mixes with, with healthy eating and with nutrition and dietetics, is that it's also just really about the behaviors that are supporting or not supporting your habits in the evening.
It's all it. And that's another thing. It's a habit. So especially if you're used to having ice cream or dessert after dinner, night after night after night, then it's no longer really a conscious choice. And you might notice that it's like you get up immediately from dinner and you have a spoon in the pint, whether you put it in a bowl or not.
So most people just don't eat right out of the
Oh, they
thing.
just like lick
Yeah,
out of the
some
pint.
people use. Oh, okay. I'm learning already on this webinar.
So yeah, if that's where the mindfulness comes in, right? Is if you can take a pause and just, what am I doing? Okay, hand in the ice cream. Do I want that? Or am I feeling another sort of way? Is there some other way I can soothe myself during this time, whether that's calling someone, journaling, lighting a candle, drinking tea? There's so many things. But,
No,
and if
but
it's,
that's so valid. I mean, what you're saying is so valid. The idea of, sometimes in CBT we call it replacing it with incompatible behaviors, right? If you are talking to someone, it makes it less likely that you're going to do that. I'm curious, as Sydney's talking and sharing all these wisdom bombs, he's dropping these bombs about what we can do differently. For you guys in who are listening, we're curious about when you struggle. So I talked about, 10 o'clock, that's when the Haagen-Dazs ad comes up. In the chat box, please just put in where do you struggle? What are the places where, just so Sydney and I can talk about it, where are the places that you struggle most in your eating? Whether it's portion control, or how much you're eating, or it's certain times of day, whether it's the other side of this that Sydney talked about, where you sometimes lose your appetite when stressed, etc. Or I know there are some people, not me, who forget to eat.
mm,
So that's something that happens. We're curious. So go ahead. We know that we learn the most when we're hearing from people. The difference between this kind of discussion and just watching a video is that you get to interact.
so
And through
that's
that interaction, you're going to learn so much more from Sydney, who's really an expert on all things related to healthy eating. So Sydney, you were talking about these different behaviors. Tell me more about what people can think about, in these times when they're feeling triggered, or they have these urges. How do you think about that, and what do you tell the clients that you're counseling on a daily basis? Because we know that you have a full practice of people that are talking about this every day. What are the things they ask, and how do you help them through it?
awesome. So I think before we get into like the more psychology of it, is I have every client, especially now, it's so important as we're all at home, really getting back into some sort of routine and eating solid meals throughout the day. And when I say solid meals, like actually putting food on a plate and taking a minute or two and thinking about what you're putting on that plate. Do you have some protein on it? Do you have maybe like a vegetable or a fruit? Rather than just drive-bys in the kitchen, as I like to call them, where you just, oh, you wake up, oh, I'll grab a handful of this, pop it in. Oh, an hour later, pass through the kitchen. Let me grab a handful of that. Because then when you do that, when there's no thought in the meals throughout the day, it makes it 10 times harder to have any sort of next right action come your witching hour, right? But if you've planned out your day, you've had some really nourishing meals, then come 9, 10 o'clock, you might have a little bit more space to be like, oh, I really nourished myself today. Do I want the ice cream or do I want to try something else? And of course, there's different mindful practices too, of like just putting the ice cream in a bowl and taking a spoonful and putting the spoon down, right? Starting to
Yeah.
slow down.
Yeah, it's interesting as you're talking to, I'm just thinking, I'm trying out everything you're saying, and I'm realizing that I wasn't aware of how much self-talk there is actually in when I'm eating. In fact, now that you're talking about it, I think like there's a whole Haagen-Dazs like presidential debate that's happening.
Oh yeah, say
Yeah.
more.
Well, like I think I asked myself, do I want that? And then there's another voice that says, shut up, right? Like there's like that dialogue that I think many people have where it's like, do I want that? Oh yeah, I'm gonna ignore that voice that says, do I want that? How can people, when they're asking, do I want that? How can you kind of practice that, or how do you help people kind of stick with that, fight off, or be mindful to, or I guess what do you say to people that say, well, I try to say that, and then these other voices come in and say, shut up.
Right. Yeah. It's a great question. So first, as adults, we lose a lot of our hunger cues. So a lot of us, and fullness cues. A lot of us are walking around like, I don't know if I'm hungry. I don't know if I'm full. And what does that mean? What does that feel like? And so we get down to the nitty gritty. In my office, I show a scale and we start putting numbers attached to the feelings. So that's what's going on in your body of like, do I want to put more food in my body? And then number two, do I want this? No, I do. Shut up. Right. Like knowing, okay, am I upset right now? If I'm upset right now, is this ice cream, like playing the tape out? Is this ice cream going to make me feel better on the other side? If it is, amazing, go for it. Right. But if you know that, then you're going to be like, why the F did I eat that? You suck. You did it again, blah, blah, blah. Like, is there another way that's going to be really supportive? Maybe it's an apple with peanut butter if you're hungry, or maybe it's making. Have you ever heard of nice cream? Nice cream.
I don't know what's in that.
So you take frozen banana,
Yeah.
you put it in a blender or food processor, you blend it up so it gets the consistency of ice cream, but it's just straight up banana. You can add some peanut butter, chocolate chips, and then you don't have like the mega dose of sugar right at night. It's just bananas.
But and it's just like room temperature, or do you like cool it?
No, so you take the bananas, you stick them in the freezer and freeze them.
Oh, you freeze them first. I got you now. Okay, I missed
Yeah.
that part. I got you.
So then it's
When
like,
it comes to cooking anything, I have to hear it like 3 or 4 times. Okay, that was good. That was an improvement for me. On the second time, I understood.
there you go.
So you freeze them, and then I got it. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So then,
Yeah,
so then it's like nice cream.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. By the way, one of the things you talk about is mindful eating, and I think we talked about that. Maybe later on, we're going to do an exercise. Are we still down for that?
Still down for it if people have snacks. Do you have
Yeah.
a
Well,
snack?
listen, I'm going to encourage everybody here. We know that people are in different situations, but if you can, go right now and grab like a raisin or a nut, or what else can they grab?
Chocolate chip,
Chocolate chip,
grape.
even a chip, right?
Yeah.
Something small from a kitchen, some kind of snack. I'm ready to go. We're not sponsored by Paul Newman's brand, but we do have these raisins right here.
I love
So take a second, grab that, and we're going to keep the conversation going. But we're going to do an exercise later that's going to get into depth about mindful eating that Sydney is an expert on. So we're talking with Sydney Greene, for those of us who joined us late. Sydney is an expert in nutrition and also on the idea of healthy eating and mindful eating, and works with people to help them to optimize how they eat and thus how they live. You know, Sydney, I'm just curious, you know, I think there's a lot of confusion about mindfulness. So before we talk about mindful eating,
Yeah.
what's your, how would you describe mindfulness in general before we talk about eating? What does it mean to you?
Sure. So what it means to me is just being present in the moment, catching my thoughts, and then trying my hardest to attach no judgment to it. And right, incorporating compassion, kindness, openness, and those are words that when people come and see me, they are not expressing those words about food or their bodies. And so taking mindfulness, those elements of presence with no judgment, and then combining it with what I was what I went to school for, which is nutrition science. And so bringing the two together, um, so that especially around food, not even just during your meal, but before eating, during eating, and after eating, being present with your thoughts and attaching no judgment towards yourself. You're allowed to say, I like this food, I don't like this food was kind of meh. But no, like, oh my God, I ate the ice cream and now I'm the worst person in the world. Or I ate a salad and I'm like, oh my God, I could be a dietitian now. Right? Like it's just, I'm eating food.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that what you said really makes sense to me, especially the part about uh, finding ways to kind of accept ourselves and our bodies. That some of the most powerful, you know, as people know, I have a mindfulness practice. I practice almost every day, and one of the things that I sometimes hear in mindfulness exercises I really like is the idea of kind of being thankful for your body, that
Mm,
it's what it's doing for you,
to-
and also the idea that your body's just okay as it is. I think we constantly are like looking at ourselves,
totally.
everyone, and saying, I wish I looked like this. I wish my this was looking like that. And that, you know, there's this, I think, larger exercise of just working towards saying, I accept myself as I am. And in a weird way, I think that actually helps us achieve other goals we might have for exercise and fitness.
Totally. I mean, we know that when you're coming from a punishing place, it's not motivating, it's not helping you. And I think, especially with food, a lot of times people will be like, I can't have this mentality around certain foods, like, I can't eat these, or I should eat this. And what I encourage people to do is kind of put like everything's on the table, it's all up for grabs. Let's allow whatever comes up. And then you're able to tune in more rather than having so much noise circling around. And I think another big takeaway for the folks watching is if you do the good food, bad food thing, like this food was so good, this food is so good, this food is so bad, not like in the way you like it, but the way you think about it, attaching morality. Start thinking about foods as always foods and sometimes foods, right? So that Haagen-Dazs might be a sometimes food, whereas spinach, if you like it, might be an always food.
The Oreos are always foods, and Haagen-Dazs sometimes.
Sure, just for you.
I love that because, you know, I think that's how I think, that's how we all think, right? And I think taking that judgment away helps you then to really moderate. Whereas I think you can go into a spiral, right? You
Mm,
know, there's a thing we talk about in psychology and addiction called the abstinence violation effect,
mhm.
right? Which is, you know, commonly known as the F it or screw it effect,
Yep,
which is if I eat a bad food, if I'm trying not to eat bad foods and I eat one bad food, then sometimes I give up on my entire goal.
totally. Yeah,
Versus if I think of it as a sometimes food, it's like, okay, I had a sometimes food. You know, that's
totally.
cool. And then I can kind of get back to eating my, what's the opposite? I'm already forgetting that. It's sometimes and everyday food
Always.
and
Oh,
always food. Right. So then I can get back to my always or my everyday foods. You know,
yeah.
we have a question here actually from someone. I don't know if you're seeing these chat questions, but and first of all, again, number one, grab your raisin, grab your chip. If you haven't done that yet, we're serious. Go grab your chip.
You
So
need to get it.
if you have to go to, if your house is so big that it takes you a long time, you're off the hook. But if you live in a place like mine where you can get to your chips quickly, or your raisins, or your chocolate chips, please go ahead and grab that, because Cindy's going to lead us through a very experiential and interesting exercise that'll help us get in touch with this idea of mindful eating.
Mm.
Um, you
So
know,
the question, we have a question.
yes. So here's a question. I rarely eat breakfast until fairly recently. I've been trying to get more fiber in my diet, suggested by my gastroenterologist. I have been eating raisin bran each morning. After breakfast, I get so tired and sleepy. Why is this? As a matter of fact, I get sleepy after every meal. What are your thoughts about that? I actually relate to that. I mean, I definitely sometimes get sleepy after meals.
Mm.
Can you listen? You're the scientist of nutrition, as you said. What are your thoughts about this question, and about why this is happening?
Okay, so I'm going to repeat it back because I'm more visual, so it's hard for me to
Yeah,
like remember it. So gastroenterologist said get more fiber. We're now eating raisin bran for breakfast and we feel sleepy after.
correct. Yeah, so tired, sleepy after eating, and then maybe even tired, sleepy after eating in general.
Makes total sense to me. And so this, I'm going to let you off the hook for a second, this human that wrote in. Raisin bran is marketed to us as like this nourishing high fiber box of goodness, right? If you flip that box around, you're going to see that there's a lot of sugar in that box and actually not so much fiber as we think. And so this is where starting to educate yourself on what reading a nutrition facts label and ingredients is huge. So what you actually might be starting your day off instead of a bowl of fiber is a bowl of sugar, which then starts you on the sugar roller coaster all day long, where after breakfast or while you're eating, you might feel energized. And then 30 minutes after, it's a crash because there's not a lot of protein in there to keep you full. And then a crash, you eat again. Likely it's something with quick carbohydrates. When I mean quick carbohydrates, I mean like white bread, white pasta, chips, whatever. Crash. I don't know if that's your experience, but what I would recommend, a couple tips, is instead of the raisin bran, maybe have some oatmeal in the morning, lots of more fiber, and try sprinkling some fresh fruit and nuts if that's available to you, because you're going to get some healthy fat and protein and actually more fiber than the raisin bran. And second tip, just a quick tip when you're reading a box, sugar should not be within the first three ingredients on the ingredient list.
It's so funny that you're saying this. I don't know if I told you this about myself, but my mother, my
Mhm.
mom had her first job in coming to New York from California, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, was as a registered dietitian.
Oh, really?
Yep. And growing up in our house, when we would go to the supermarket
Yeah.
as a kid, I could tell you, if you picked any box of cereal
Yeah.
out, I would be able to tell you what ingredient sugar was in the list of ingredients,
That's
because my
impressive.
sister and I had memorized where it was, because we weren't allowed to have any cereal where sugar was one of the first three ingredients.
That's amazing.
How hilarious is that? So, I
Mhm.
mean, and I think that one of the things that you're saying is, and I have a question for you about this, is that, sugar is really dangerous.
Yeah.
I
It
mean, just as a principle, sugar is a really dangerous thing.
it is. And it sneaks into 75% of the packaged foods in the supermarket, and not just sweet foods. It's in your salad dressing, in your sauces, in your condiments, and there's over 61 different names for sugar on an ingredient list.
Is
And
one of
none
them yum?
one yum? Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the that's the one I know. The
Yum.
secret, yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's so addictive. I mean, it really is. I read this quote from Jack LaLanne
Mhm.
once that said, um, "If it tastes good, spit it out." And well, I think you probably, as a my fleeting proponent, as a nutritionist, think that's ridiculous because you have all these creative ways. I just think, like, one of the things that sometimes happens for me is I'll substitute, like I won't eat sugar and I'll eat something else, and I'll realize, as you said, well, sugar's kind of in it. So I think what you're saying is you have to be really careful
Yeah,
and take a look at what's in things.
totally. And it requires more time for sure. And like you're going to stand at the grocery store one day when it's okay to go to a grocery store and spend a lot of time there and like really start reading stuff. But then once you know, you make a list of what works for you and you don't have to do that again. But yeah, sugar is really sneaky and it makes its way into a lot of our foods. And especially like if you're starting your day off with something you don't know there's extra sugar, of course, come 9 p.m. you want the Haagen-Dazs because you started your day off with it.
Yeah. This webinar is moving really fast for me, which is like a really
What
good sign.
time?
I hope it's moving fast. It's 10:30 already. Hey, so let's just think about this. How long do you want to do your exercise? Um,
I mean, we could do it in like 5 minutes.
okay. Because we have some really good questions coming in.
Okay, let's
Before
hear
we
them.
get to them, I just want to, we talked about mindfulness, but in brief, when you say mindful eating,
Yeah.
what does that mean? Before we even do the exercise, I want to make sure we get to that. What does that mean, and how can people think about that? Or is it better that we wait to the exercise for you to explain it and then?
Let's wait till the exercise.
Great. Two really good questions that are coming in that I'm curious to hear your thoughts on, Sydney. We're
Yeah.
talking with Sydney Greene. Sydney's an expert on nutrition. She's a scientist of nutrition, everyone. And she's also has a vibrant practice where she counsels people on nutrition and how you can make the most of your eating habits and thus the rest of your life. We have some great questions here from folks. One of them, which I'm asking for a friend, this one,
Okay.
is how do you know if you have a sugar addiction? I have some thoughts about that too, but I'm curious from your perspective, what
Mhm.
tells you that people have a sugar, or how do you think about that question?
Oh, that's such a good question. Um, I want to like be really mindful of how I answer it. I think sugar addiction, or more so like food addiction, is a really emerging topic in research. And Jonathan, you can probably speak more to that. But I think when I see somebody and they come in, they're like, "I'm a sugar addict." Usually, this person will like can't stop, will or at least tells themselves that they can't stop. And sometimes it's all mental, and it's like they come from a lot of restricting and dieting, and so it's been ingrained that like I can't eat this cookie, I can't eat this cookie, the F it, and then they keep eating it. But sometimes for specific people, when they eat sugar, the phenomenon of craving is kicked up, as we say in the addiction world, and it's I'm powerless, can't stop, and there's lots of harmful effects afterwards. And so it really depends on the person, I think, and working with a professional to find that.
Yeah, well, before I even answer this, I'm curious, what made you so mindful? Like when I asked you that, you said you paused. Like where did you go there? What were you thinking about?
So I think with the people that I work with specifically, those in recovery, whether it's from disordered eating or substance use, language is so important, right? Or even just a regular person that doesn't have a lot of stuff that comes to me. We use words like binge eating, binging, addiction, like food addict, whatever, and we throw these words around without really understanding maybe what they're grounded in. And I think that can be, I had one client that was like, I had a small frozen yogurt, I binged last night. It's like, I don't know that that's really necessarily a binge. And so we need to start educating, because then if we can soften the language, that has like a huge effect moving forward in one's relationship with food.
I
So
totally agree with that. Yeah,
yeah,
I think that's really wise.
yeah,
Because I think the other thing that you're saying, is that there's power in words. And even if we say like I have a sugar addiction, it may be that we have an unhelpful relationship with sugar, or that our relationship with sugar is causing us problems.
right.
But when I think of the word addiction too, what I think of is, you know, more just along the lines of dependence or abuse, meaning like, do I have a dependent relationship with sugar? Am I abusing sugar, as a substance? Because to me, sugar is a substance. And that's
Totally.
coming from someone who's battled sugar too. and had success with it, but really had moments where like sugar was something that, I mean, I've definitely eaten all the M&Ms in a Hanukkah dreidel contest. So like I know what sugar can do. I think the other part of it reminds me of the Dylan Thomas quote. An alcoholic is someone who drinks as much as you do, but whom you don't like.
Mm,
And really, it's about problem behavior. And if alcohol's a problem, it's a problem. And if
yeah,
sugar's a problem, it's a problem. And so really saying, how can we replace? But I think the question goes to something deeper, which is to say, how do I know if I have a problem? I mean, for me, what I think about is, do you have really unwanted or harmful thoughts for yourself related to the behavior? Or are other people in your environment commenting to you about what's happening in your behavior? So I think if you really are having, if you're disturbed by your behavior around your eating, it's helpful to talk to someone about that, whether it's someone like Sydney or someone who's a therapist, and really get a sense. And I think in a very quick conversation, you can get a sense, because the most important person to determine that really is the person who's experiencing it. But I
totally.
think if there's some, significant distress that you're experiencing, it's likely that it's become a problem for you, and it's worth having a more nuanced conversation.
Totally. Agree. Mic drop.
I wish I had a pint of Haagen-Dazs. Wait, hold on. I think I do. I mean? Like, yeah, I'll just do a Haagen-Dazs drop.
There we go.
It's not Haagen-Dazs. It's berry chantilly. What do you think of berry chantilly almond milk?
Sounds
Is
delicious.
approved?
Sounds great.
Okay. So I think we're coming up on our time. Oh, we have one more question that I wanted to get to, if that's okay with you, Sydney.
Yeah, go for it.
The question is, and this goes back to our original topic, about eating and the time we're in. Is now a good time to start a diet? Is now a good or a bad time to start a diet? This is a good question. There's a lot of nice cream in that question. But what do
Yeah,
you think about that? Is now a good or a bad time to start a diet?
I think it's a really bad time to start a diet. And I think getting curious about that word diet too, right? So, without going into the weeds with it, I'll just say, like, no, don't start keto or vegan or whatever right now, because there's so much up in the air. There's so much unpredictability, that if you are somebody that's predisposed to like the efforts or the negative self-talk, and you start like going for a diet, and tomorrow the world takes even yet another turn, that could just lead to more negative self-talk. And so instead of starting a diet, maybe now's the time that you're going to start plating all of your food, right? So instead of having snacks and grazing on things at your desk, put your snacks in a bowl. Maybe now's the time where you're going to start eating more vegetables. Maybe now's the time you're going to start looking at your food and seeing if you can add more color into it. That's a big thing I've been doing with people lately, is like, can you eat 3 colors a day? It sounds childish, especially when I say it's like a 60-year-old man, but it's really simple, and it makes you look at your food a little more.
No
Uh,
doubt.
yeah,
Yeah, I love that. So the goal there is 3 colors a day.
3 colors a day.
I love that. I mean, I think that's such a great idea. For people, it's such a great thing for kids too. The 3
Oh,
colors a day idea.
yeah, eating the rainbow, you know? And bonus points if you eat all the colors. It makes it really fun. I like to, like, for dinner, make a bunch of different sides and be like, okay, I got purple, I got green, got yellow. It's fun.
Hold on a second. I got a little camera problem. I'm coming back.
Okay.
Yeah. So why don't I fix this? There we go. I'm back. I'm back. Everyone. Sorry for the scare. I didn't abandon the healthy eating discussion. My camera just freaked out a little bit.
Sure.
I was actually just eating. I was actually eating this. I turned it off so I could have a couple spoonfuls. When you talk about mindful eating, because we're going to do an exercise. So if you haven't grabbed your raisin or your chip, go ahead and please grab it. We're going to do an exercise here with Sydney. When you talk about mindful eating, what does that mean? And
Mhm.
and you know, well, actually, just why don't you take it away here, Sydney? And you know, you've piloted this a number of times. We've many people here. Let us know. Did you guys grab your raisin? Go in the chat box and let us know if you have what. Well, let us know what you have. We'll put it
Yes,
that way. What
that's
did you go in the chat box there and let us know? Just hit chat and type in there, what did you grab to do this exercise with us?
nice popcorn. That's a good one. So I call this, I've kind of shifted away from mindful eating to soulful eating. Pretzel rod, nice. So soulful eating, you know, beginning to connect mind, body, and soul with food while using the elements of mindfulness and nutrition science. So I'm going to guide, since I can only see you, Jonathan, you're going to be my eyes are on you, and I'm going to guide you through this knowing that I'm guiding everyone. But I run groups on this, and I'm used to seeing everyone with their different food items. So this is a first for me for only being able to see one person. So Jonathan,
I'm your test subject.
eyes on you. So everyone, I'm going to guide you through this. Is we say a raisin because John Kabat-Zinn, who's a big mindfulness guy, created this exercise, the raisin exercise. And you can use anything, but a raisin's an interest, the one he used. So everyone, I want you to have your food. We're just gonna start. You can hold it in your fingers, and you're just gonna start. Nice. You got that juicy raisin.
There's the raisin, everybody. I bet you never seen one so close on Zoom before.
So just start feeling what it is that's in your hand right now. You can come with the eyes closed if that's most comfortable to you. Really sensing the texture, how it feels. You're gonna next bring this up to your nose, whatever food you have. Go ahead and take a couple deep inhales. Seeing what you smell. If you notice anything happening in your body as a result of the smell, saliva, tummy growling, any thoughts, memories popping up. And after you've smelled it, bring it back out in front of you, and you can come with the eyes open and start looking at this piece of food as if you're a Martian seeing it for the first time. What is this thing in front of me? Noticing where the light hits it, if it reminds you of anything. And when you're ready, gently bring the food up to your lips. You can go ahead and put it into your mouth without chewing. Just first let the food move it around in your mouth a bit. Noticing how it feels against your tongue, your teeth. And as you're ready, you can begin to chew. Tuning in if you notice different flavors in different parts of your mouth. And granted, this is one piece of food and we still want there to be something to swallow. So go ahead and swallow. And notice where in the body you stop feeling that single morsel of food. Okay. So I bet no one has eaten a popcorn or a pretzel rod or a raisin like that before.
No way. Yeah, I mean, I'm curious. Let's ask these folks some questions for the chat. What do we want to know?
So let's first, this is my favorite question. Any memories pop up as you did that?
I definitely had a memory, which is really interesting. And I've done this exercise with you before, but and really enjoyed it. But I'm curious for folks, what memories came up for those of you that had memories as you ate your pretzel or your your raisin, what came up for you? For me, it was really interesting. I actually remembered being a kid.
Mm.
My first word or sentence was "dirty Ray Ray," which was like finding raisins in the kitchen.
Huh.
And I remembered like these raisins from my youth. I could like sort of remember that. We used to have like these I guess they were sun made, but like the tiny little packs,
Like the red box.
those little red box, and I could just
Yep.
sort of like remember that in a vibrant way.
Mm. Yeah, childhood memories. Another question could be, what did the smell signal to you? So did you notice anything happening in your body, in your mouth, in your stomach? In the chat, if you notice anything. Did you start salivating, Jonathan?
A little bit, a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I felt like, each time I do that, I notice something different, which I think is sort of part of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
How does this relate for you to mindful eating?
So someone wrote that they feel satisfied, right? It's quite different to eat something really slow. And mindful eating is not, by the way. You don't have to eat all your meals like that. That's too much, right? But it's just you were present. You weren't watching TV, handful after handful, starting to use all the senses. Digestion starts with chewing. A lot of us don't even chew our food. And so anyone that has digestive issues, gas, bloating, if you're not chewing fully, right? So beginning to slow down, get present, notice what's happening in your body instead of being really intellectualized about it, of like, is this pretzel good for me? Is this raisin good for me? So that's what we're after with the mindful eating, or the soulful eating, as I like to call it, like bringing more enjoyment to food. And also you get to really tune in and see, do I like this food? I have some people who think raisins are, the best like healthy snack ever. They do this exercise and then they're like, ew, and I actually don't. Right? And you get to decide that and have more agency and confidence in your decisions, rather than leaving it up to like me, like the experts, to tell you what to eat or what not to eat.
Totally. I guess my curiosity here, Sydney, is if you're going to give some people like one recommendation
Mm-hmm.
that they could work on to eat more mindfully, what would you give them?
Yeah. So once a week, I think everyone can do once a week, plan a snack that you're going to eat the same way you just ate that one morsel of food.
That's
So,
great. That's a great take home, right?
yeah.
Just like, so for those of you listening, one takeaway here from Sydney of the various ones that we had. I mean, my takeaway is thinking about things as, sometimes foods versus always foods. That's one. Every time I talk to Sydney, I learn a little bit more about myself in terms of how I eat. But that's a great idea. But I like this other idea, and I'm going to do it. I'm committing, everyone, this week to taking one meal or snack where I'm just going to try to eat it in the way that I just ate that raisin. This has been a very fast webinar, and it flew by, and it's due to all of your enthusiasm. Sydney Greene has been so generous to donate her time to all of you and us. Thank you so much, Sydney, for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And Sydney, this is just the tip of the iceberg about her knowledge and wealth of information about nutrition. She's a scientist of nutrition, and also a coach of soulful eating, and many other talents in terms of helping people live lifestyles that are healthy and vibrant. We all need it because these are challenging times, and so any help we can get, and Sydney is a big help. So if you have any other questions, and I'm sure you do, you should follow up with Sydney. Here's her email: Sydney at Sydney Greene Health, which is her health counseling practice that focuses on nutrition, among many other things. Please reach out to Sydney for any other questions. We'll see you next week. We're having a really interesting conversation. Oh, there we are. There's the grandma.
There we go.
There we are. There's Mogwai. And after they come in contact with water, if they come into water with them coming to water, or they eat after midnight, they turn to the gremlin. So there you go.
Gosh.
So there you go. There down there is your sometimes, and up here is your always.
I
And
love
so
it.
let's be Mogwais more, and only sometimes turn into gremlins, and
I
use some of the
love
skills
it.
that Cindy shared with us. Next week, we're going to be back on talking to my co-founder at Union Square Practice, Dr. Michael Dulshin. And Mike and I will be talking about the idea of what makes therapy work, how counseling actually works, and how it can help, and what are the inside scoop on that. So thanks again, Sydney, and we'll sure to have you back on at some point.
Thanks for having me. It was good to see you, Jonathan. Thanks everyone for participating. It
Uh,
was so much fun.
Take care. Have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.